it's almost like a baby being born, learning to crawl, then to walk, then to run, and then to do all sorts of things that child can do. Right. So in terms of our workshop today, we're basically going to cover 5 topics. We'll do an introduction to entrepreneurship. What is entrepreneurship all about? Who is an entrepreneur? What kind of person are they? How do they think? Where do ideas come from? And then we'll talk about designing your business model. Now, don't be intimidated by the jargon. This is just jargon, but when we discuss it, it all makes sense. And I'm a very practical person, so whatever we discuss, we will reinforce it with a practical example of how these things work. And over and above that, I'm not your typical teacher who imparts information and expects you to understand it. I think education is a learning journey both for the facilitator and for the students. So I will ask questions. I will also allow you to interrupt me as I speak if something doesn't quite make sense. Let's unpack it. I'm hoping we don't take too much time, but at the same time, let us not restrict ourselves from the learning experience by not asking questions. Because the last thing I want you to do is to walk away from this session saying, oh geez, I should have asked Dennis this to try and make a little bit more sense out of it. So we'll talk about business model, we'll talk about your value proposition. I'm sure some of these terms you've heard about them, but we'll unpack those terms and see how they apply to your life as an entrepreneur. And then testing your business idea, how do you do that? And then after you've tested your business idea, how do you then grow your business? So if we can begin, and we are in an environment where we're all believers, and as an entrepreneur, I've always found Deuteronomy 8 verse 18 to be a very important verse in terms of how an entrepreneur conducts themselves and how they see themselves moving. And I'll just read it out. It says, and you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant which he swore to you, to your fathers, as it is this day. And I think this verse is very important in us grounding ourselves and realizing where our source comes from, where our inspiration comes from, where our resources come from. And remember, this is a covenant. So if you are embarking on a journey of entrepreneurship, you must know that it was preordained that you will succeed. And I think that's very important. We're going to talk about the entrepreneurial mindset and how people think. But for me, as an entrepreneur, this piece of scripture really grounds me in terms of how I think about my life as an entrepreneur. So let's get into our introduction to entrepreneurship. If I had to ask a question, and I like picking on people because I believe everyone has an answer. So if I had to ask you, what is entrepreneurship to you? What do you think it is? Okay. And what do you think? Okay. All right. And let's find a gentleman there. We go.
Starting businesses that employ people to generate income.
Right. There's an element of truth to all of that. So entrepreneurship itself is actually a process, right? It's a process of combining resources to produce new goods or services. So there's newness to it. It's something new, something that didn't exist before, right? And this comes about by taking risks and then receiving the rewards for that, which is the income that we talked about. But over and above that, entrepreneurship is also a mindset. right? It's a way of thinking and reasoning which is based on looking at opportunities, right? And it's holistic in approach. You don't just look at an opportunity, but you look at the opportunity within its context, right? And it involves leadership, because as an entrepreneur starting the business, you immediately are the leader. So leadership skills are inherent in an entrepreneur, because as the founder of the venture, you're actually the leader by default, right? And then over and above that, it's actually a skill. It's a management skill. And it being a skill means it can be taught. We'll talk about the myths around how people view entrepreneurship and some of the views that society has in general. For example, that no, but entrepreneurs, they're just born with a gift, right? Entrepreneurship is a skill, which means that it can be taught. And that's why I'm passionate about it. When we are at this business school, we teach entrepreneurship. There's nothing about entrepreneurs being born. This is a skill. And it involves the capacity for innovation, which is creative thinking, right? Investment, in other words, how do you manage resources? And proactive market development. So, as an entrepreneur, one of the key skills that you will always need to have is the ability to sell. Because for you to get money, you need to give away value to someone, and you must convince that person that, hey, listen, I have something of value to give you in exchange for their money. So selling skills are very important. So if you are one of those people, and it doesn't mean that you must be a talkative person like me, but you must be able to communicate effectively. So selling is not really supposed to be one of those things where you are a fast-talking guy who can convince, how to sell, ice to an Eskimo. But you must be able to articulate and communicate what you are trying to sell to your target audience. And then there is a difference. Somebody mentioned when we said entrepreneurship, immediately they said small business. There is a difference between entrepreneurship and small business management. When an entrepreneurial venture starts, it will always start small. There are no business that suddenly start with 20 supermarkets and they're making money from day one. That doesn't exist. Even if you had to look at fantastic businesses in our South African context, like your ShopRites, for example, they all started small, right? So it may start off small, right? But its very nature as an entrepreneurial venture versus a small business is that it is visionary. So you may start off, for argument's sake, with a small catering company which is simply providing meals for, weddings and functions and things like that. But as you start that venture, as an entrepreneur, if your vision, and remember, these things also come from you being inspired. If you begin your business with a vision, right, of being the equivalent of the catering division of Bidvest, where you are saying these huge industrial that will be supplying food to canteens to most of the companies, most of the big companies around Gauteng, right? Already that mindset that you have, right, as you build your small catering business, you're already thinking 5, 10 years ahead and dreaming about how big this business is going to be. But as you begin, if your idea is that I want to start my own little catering company, I'm going to cook from my kitchen and I'm going to do 50 plates, and if I do 50 plates, I will have done well. You will be limited to that very vision, because remember, the mind is a powerful thing. So in your mind, if you're saying, I will have done well if I'm doing 50 plates of pap and mohudu every day, I'm successful. You will exactly be that, right? So small businesses, right, when it comes to innovation, right, they're usually in a very undifferentiated market. They're in a market where everyone is doing the same thing, How do you innovate beyond Pegamagwenya? Because if that's all you do, that's exactly where you're going to stay. Whereas an entrepreneurial venture is creating something that didn't exist before, something that's slightly different. So maybe, you're doing amagwinya, but they have a twist of something in terms of ingredients. Or you may even be saying, no, I'm still going to do magwinya as they are, but my business model, we'll talk about business model, but my business model is going to be different because amagwinya one, I'm going to be taking them to office parks. I'm going to package them nicely. It'll be the same thing. I'm going to package it nicely, but I'm going to deliver to my clients. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a weekly order from my clients and they only pay me at the end of the week. Right? Same product, same guinya, but maybe it's in a nice packaged box, right? And you are giving the convenience to your customer to say, listen, I'm going to give you your magunya for the week. Every day you want 2, I'll give you 2. You pay me at the end of the week. That's innovation. You're still supplying equity. It's the same thing. But you've packaged it in such a way that it now adds value. And remember, we were going to talk about value proposition. So guess what? You may find that you can charge, let's say Igwinya on the street is going for 5 rand each. By adding value, you probably will be able to charge your client 7 rand 50, 8 rand, because of that additional service that you are providing. Right? So innovation becomes very important. The other issue is growth potential. Right? A small business, right, with no growth potential will start small, and it will stay small, and it will die small. Whereas an entrepreneurial venture, the entrepreneur is constantly thinking of growth. Constantly thinking of growth. Like we said last time, right? If you are saying, if my little catering business is going to provide 50 plates of pap in Mahud per day, and will not look beyond that, it will stay small, and it will die small. Right? Then the other thing, and this is where I need you to think beyond the jargon. So we talk about something called strategic intent. Strategic intent is basically what we discussed earlier on. It's vision. What is your vision for this business? Right? A small business has no vision. A small business looks at the day-to-day. We call it subsistence. You are looking at today, if I do my 50 plates, all I need is enough working capital to do another 50 plates tomorrow. Whereas a visionary business is saying, if I want to get to where I want to get to, and I'm doing 50 plates today, and I'm saying I want to do 5,000 plates a day, right? What is it going to take for me? 1, to get the market. 2, to look for the resources. Put those resources together and grow towards doing 5,000 plates, right? So the next thing, so we've discussed entrepreneurship and we talked about what an entrepreneurial venture or a small business is and the difference between the two. Now, who is an entrepreneur? In other words, what kind of person are they? Anyone want to take a step? If we were to say an entrepreneur, what kind of person are they? Yes. Who wants to grow big, right? Anyone else? Yes. Maybe use the mic so everyone can hear. Oh, there's a mic.
I think entrepreneurs are innovative people that are constantly thinking of new ways to do things.
Right, that's correct. Yes, madam.
An entrepreneur is someone who sees an opportunity of what they can add value to their community.
Right. Anyone else want to throw in something before we move on? Okay, cool. So, for me, the best way of describing an entrepreneur, defining them, is actually by looking at what he or she does. Right? So an entrepreneur, first and foremost, identifies new opportunities for new businesses or products and services, right? They start their own enterprise. So an entrepreneur is not somebody who goes and buys shares in another company. An entrepreneur is somebody who comes up with an idea and starts something from scratch, right? They manage that business, right? That came out. They organize and control resources, whether those resources are material resources, financial resources, human resources. They manage those resources, combine them in such a way that they can generate profit, right? Going back to what I said about being able to sell, entrepreneurs should be able to market a concept, product or service. Right? The other thing the entrepreneur does is that they obtain financial means. So they figure out a way of getting resources to get their venture going. And we'll unpack that a little bit later on. Then over and above that, they take calculated risks. Everybody, or society in general, generally look at entrepreneurs and say, yeah, these guys, they are serious risk takers. They don't look to see what's out there, they just go for it. That is the biggest lie you will ever be told. As an entrepreneur, normally you are the most risk-averse person there is, because 99% of the time, you're actually operating with so few resources that you need to make sure that you guard those resources. You can't risk them. And then in some cases, you've borrowed money from the bank, from family, from friends. You can't afford to waste those resources. So by nature, the risks that you take are calculated. And when we say those risks are calculated, those risks are based on data. They are based on you having gone into your market to see what's out there. How many people? What price should I be selling? What color do they like? What flavors? You are interrogating your market to find out what is it that the market wants. And by the time you now take resources to say, I am spending to start making my product or providing my service, you've calculated the risk. You don't just wake up in the morning and just say, I'm doing it. Right? That's a myth when it comes to entrepreneurship. And then, in the entrepreneurship space, right, we have different types of entrepreneurs, right? Would anybody be able to guess where I'm going with different types of entrepreneurs? Yes? Mm-hmm. Okay. So where I'm getting at here is that you remember earlier on I talked about having an entrepreneurial mindset. So an entrepreneur can exist in different spheres of life, right? Possibly here as we sit, and as I unpack it, it might probably then start making sense, right? Probably here, there are people who say, you know what, I don't think I'll ever have the stomach to actually run my own business. That's just not me. But I'm a very creative person in what I do, right? So, we end up with three types of entrepreneurs. So we have the startup entrepreneur, who is the person we generally talk about when we are together like this. Somebody who takes a risk, starts a business, and that business is intended to make some form of profit. And the second entrepreneur that we have is what we call the corporate entrepreneur, or the intrapreneur. This person is a person with a creative mindset, right? But they actually work for someone else. This is someone who works for Coca-Cola or for Nestle or for whatever company they work for. But this person, their mindset is always looking at opportunities to help grow their employers' businesses. And one thing I can tell you is that whilst you may not have the appetite to start your own business, if you are working for an organization, having that entrepreneurial mindset will reward you with profits just like a startup entrepreneur, in the sense that you will get bonuses, you will get promoted, you will be recognized within your organization. So just having that entrepreneurial mindset, right? Even think if we did a market day and invited people from the community to come and sell their wares, and we charge them a small rental for having a table, that's entrepreneurial mindset, because what you are doing is you are adding value to an organization that you belong to, right? So we have the corporate entrepreneur. And then we have the social entrepreneur. The social entrepreneur is someone who wants to add value to communities, right? Typical social entrepreneur is this gentleman hiding behind his mask in the form of Pastor Duke, right? He is looking at adding value to society, but not necessarily make a profit out of it. Our being here, so I wear all three hats. I'm in business, I'm employed, but I also come and stand before you to add value to you as part of the community of Christians. So I'm a social entrepreneur, I'm a corporate entrepreneur, I'm a startup entrepreneur. I embody all of those things. So as you sit here, even if you are not thinking of starting a business today, what we're trying to do today is to plant those seeds of an entrepreneurial mindset. How to think entrepreneurially, even in your family setup, right? If you are thinking creatively and entrepreneurially, you're a corporate entrepreneur, because guess what? A family is an organization, is it not? It's made up of different stakeholders who occupy different positions, and the family has a vision to get to somewhere, right? So those are different types of entrepreneurs. So now the question becomes, is entrepreneurship for you? I would hazard a guess to say, regardless of which type of entrepreneur you are going to be, it is for you, right? People have different motivations for pursuing entrepreneurship. But it's generally for two main reasons. The first one, we term it as necessity-based entrepreneurship. This is when an individual is driven into starting a business due to lack of employment opportunities. You know, someone has been retrenched, or someone has just finished university or college, or they matriculated, and there are no opportunities to either further their education, or there are no jobs around, right? The necessity-based entrepreneurship normally is associated with small business. That's where you say, you know what, just for me to survive, let me start my little stand, at an intersection and make makunya for the people, right? You're a necessity-based entrepreneur at that point in time. But if you have started there, but your mindset is saying, you know what, this is what has been given to me in my hands. How can I grow this? Then the potential of you moving from the corner shop to a bakery to something bigger is still there. So it's not to say a necessity-based entrepreneur is never going to succeed beyond the corner where they are. It's all about your vision. Then, the second type of entrepreneurship is what we call opportunity-driven entrepreneurship. This is where somebody actually sees an opportunity. They see a gap, right? And they still have other options. They can go into employment, they can stay in employment. But the opportunity that they've seen is so exciting that they actually decide to drop everything and pursue that. But regardless, like I said earlier on, regardless of how an entrepreneur starts their business, right? Their mindset, their competency, and their vision actually determines how that venture is going to grow. Now, do you have an entrepreneurial mindset, right? Because this is the foundation of entrepreneurship. The way entrepreneurship, the way they think, that's the source of creativity. And that's the basis by which you formulate new products and services, right? And this fancy word, cognitive adaptability, the ability to be dynamic. Dynamic simply means, like you say, guy can move around. You're flexible. You're constantly out there looking at different things. That's simply what it means, right? Flexible. You're willing to look at things in a different light. You're willing to accept criticism. You're willing to learn. Right? That's all part of an entrepreneurial mindset. Right? Self-regulating. In other words, can you manage yourself? Because remember, as you start up your business, you are the leader, and sometimes as you start up, you are the only one there. Right? Are you willing to put in the hours? Are you willing to make the necessary sacrifices? Are you willing to learn and make mistakes and learn again? Right? All that goes back to your mindset. But what I would like to do at this point is to actually just dispel some of the lies that have been put in our minds about who an entrepreneur is, how they are, and how they think, and all of those things. The first one we discussed is this thing where they say, hey, entrepreneurs are born and not made. Right? Until today, and I'm a firm believer in science, until today, they still have not discovered in the DNA of a person a gene which is for entrepreneurship. Right? So what does that tell us? Entrepreneurs are not born. Entrepreneurs are made. And they are made through being forged by education, by skills, by experience, by exposure, all of those things. So there is no such thing to say, hey, Patrice Motsepe was just born with it.
Yeah.
He wasn't. He was born on the same level as everybody on God's green earth. The second myth is that entrepreneurs are the smartest and most high-achieving people in the world. Entrepreneurs are the brightest crayon in the box. Nonsense. Any great entrepreneur you will meet will always tell you that, and you will see, genuine entrepreneurs, they are very humble people.
Yeah.
In a crowded room, a billionaire, you will not make him out.
That's right.
He's the kind of person who will actually come and sit and listen to you. Because he's constantly tapping his networks for new ideas. So by him standing there and saying, I know everything, people say, hey, what can you tell this one? People become intimidated by that person. I'm telling you, if you had to go and Google and just look at the characteristics of some of the most successful entrepreneurs in this world, one of their key traits is humility. The other myth is that entrepreneurs are undisciplined. They're just those guys going around, they make money and they splash their money and they do all sorts of things. And that is actually nonsense, because entrepreneurs by nature are people who love to nurture and grow things. They don't like to waste resources. I would say, even come to me in however many years, the way I look at certain things is very different. For example, I look at a vehicle as a tool. It's like a rake or a spade or a toothbrush.
That's right.
It helps me get a job done.
Yeah.
It takes me from point A to point B. Therefore, for you to ever see me driving one of these big G-Wagons and making noise for people and polluting the atmosphere, right? It doesn't add value. It doesn't add value to me. It doesn't add value to society, right? And I can tell you, go back and analyze the nature of the person who actually drives a G-Wagon, and you realize they actually are not an entrepreneur. Guys, winning a tender is not entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
You have done nothing, you have added no value. You win a tender to supply masks. Did you make that mask? Did you even sell the mask? You were simply given an opportunity to buy a mask from China, put a markup on it, and supply it to government. You've done nothing. You have not added any value to society. How many jobs have you created? And sustainable jobs at that. mindset. And we'll discuss it a little bit further on, where I always talk about entrepreneurship is actually anti-money. That might sound a little bit confusing. Entrepreneurship is anti-money, but we'll unpack it just now. Now, the other thing is, they say entrepreneurs are just lucky. Hey, Motsepe is just lucky. Just a lucky guy. Guys, the word luck for me is the intersection between preparation and opportunity. Right now as we speak, we've all had opportunities come to us, but we were not prepared and we passed us. So that intersection between preparedness and opportunity is critical. And when we talk about preparation, what are we talking about? We're talking about learning. And when we say learning, I'm not saying go and do a PhD like Dennis is trying to do. Right? Every day we learn something which allows us to add value to ourselves. Right? And guys, just reading books, watching the news, exposing yourself to the world out there helps to prepare you for when that opportunity comes and bumps into you. It's not luck. Because if you are not prepared, right, the speed at which the opportunity will come and your preparedness is such that this one will go and you will continue on your path of holding nothing. So entrepreneurs are not lucky. They are prepared for the opportunity. The other one is that entrepreneurs just love risk. They treat life and business as if they were in a casino, where they throw the dice and hope for the best. That again, ladies and gentlemen, is nonsense. Right? Entrepreneurs cannot, they take calculated risks. We discussed this a little bit earlier. They take calculated risks before they start deploying resources and taking chances. Then the other one is that entrepreneurs are selfish individualists. Right? That is also far from the truth. Most successful entrepreneurs today, whether they're in South Africa or America or Europe or wherever they might be, I will tell you, if you research them, you will hear that Herman Mashaba, right, was the face of Black Like Me. But behind him was a team. You go to the telecoms giant that started in Zimbabwe, which is now global, Econet Wireless. Strive Masiwa did not start that business on his own. He's not an individual. He has a team of people, some of whom still work with him today, almost 30 years later, who started that business. Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, he's got these guys who he was in college with when they started Facebook. Right? So, entrepreneurs are not individualists because one of the things that they learn at a very, very, very early stage is the skills that they don't have. And that comes from humility. To say, you know what, I trained as an accountant, I'm a great finance person, right? But the product that I'm trying to do needs engineering skills. Where do I get the best possible engineering skills to bring into my team? Right? Even that idea of saying, okay, I've lost my job and I've started at the side of the road. As you start, maybe your previous job was as a receptionist. And what you are actually good at doing is communicating, but hours will pay. So what you do, you go and get someone to come alongside you who has the skill to be able to pay. Jesus Christ himself, the biggest social entrepreneur on earth, he had 12 dudes following him around. Hey, when I do this, 5 loaves and so many fish. Right? So similarly, an entrepreneur is not this lone individual who just does things on their own. And here's the interesting thing. I'm sure we've seen some of these faces. 68% of the ultra wealthy in this world, that means people who are worth $30 million or more, are actually self-made entrepreneurs. They did not inherit a single cent from anyone. Right? Warren Buffett, 72 billion, started from scratch. His father gave him nothing. Elon Musk, from Pretoria, he is even worth more than 30 billion now. Started from scratch. His grandfather never left him anything. Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world who owns Amazon, started from scratch. His parents were immigrants. They didn't have money. Oprah Winfrey, we all know her, she grew up on a farm, barely educated. The richest woman in the world today, self-made. Now the question becomes, how did they amass such wealth in such a short space of time? Anybody want to answer that question for me? Or attempt to answer it? Why? What made these people in such a short space of time? I mean, there are some companies that will never make that money. There are some companies that are over 100 years old who have not made that kind of money. How do they do it? Yes?
I think they did what they loved doing.
Okay. For everyone to hear.
I think that they did what they loved doing.
They did what they love doing. Passion. What else? Take a guess, guys. In entrepreneurship, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just an answer. Yes, sir.
Or determination.
Determination. Mindset. Yes. Confidence, ability to succeed. Yes. They had a vision. Yes. Anyone else? Discipline. Constant discipline. Anyone else? Okay. Now, these people managed to amass so much wealth because they solve problems. They are problem solvers. The size of your business, and I want you to write this down. But the Bible says, write it down. Write it in your heart. The size of your business is proportional, directly proportional. Right? And when we say directly proportional, the size of your business is equal to the size of the problem that you are trying to solve. So, if you are solving a R1 million problem, you are going to make millions. If you are solving a 5,000 rand problem, you get your 5,000. This goes back to my 50 plates of pap and cool. If that's the problem you are trying to solve, because those 50 plates probably service one small company which has 50 employees, and you give them their 50 plates every day. You will not grow beyond that, because the problem that you are trying to solve is that. But if the problem you are trying to solve is the provision of traditional food at lunchtime for as many people as possible in South Africa, guess what? You are now trying to solve a R1 million problem. So as you ideate whatever it is that you want to do, think about the size of the problem that you are trying to solve. If you open a barber shop, and your vision is to open that barber shop and stay there, the problem you are trying to solve is directly proportional to the number of people who need their haircut within your vicinity. They may be 50,000 people. But if you say, I'm going to set up this barber shop and do it so well that I'm going to end up franchising this barber shop, I'm going to create a brand out of my barber shop, and I'm going to end up with 70 branches across South Africa, guess what? The problem you are now trying to solve is 50 times bigger than where you started. Jeff Bezos is worth over, I don't know now, it's maybe 200 billion US dollars through Amazon, because that's the size of the problem that he is solving, and no one else seems to be able to solve that problem better than him. So, we must always be looking to solve problems as entrepreneurs. Now you say to yourself, yo, so it means there's no opportunity for me because I don't have those ideas. Guys, let me tell you something, and this is not even a secret. Which continent on God's earth has got the most problems? Which continent? Africa. Africa has got the worst problems, from poverty, unemployment, education, water, energy. The list just goes on and on and on. Diseases, you name it. Runaway problems. So, if you are thinking as an entrepreneur and you are trying to solve problems, come to Africa. And here we are. Our brothers are saying the first chance I get to get a visa to go to America, I'm going. Because this place is full of problems. And some of us are saying, I know you can go. Tina, I want to remain and try and solve this problem. But guess what? The Chinese, the Europeans, they're all coming here. Why? Because all they see are problems. I'll tell you a funny story. I'm sure you guys all know about it. You know the butter shoe company. Butter shoe company was started in Canada many, many years ago. No, in fact, Thomas Butter, who is the founder of Butter, worked for a shoe company. And he was then assigned to go and, to go and look for more business by his principals. Right? He went with a colleague of his. In fact, it was his boss. They came to Africa. And they were supposed to have a look at the market, see what's there, size up the opportunity, and then go back because their company wanted to expand. When they got back, and Thomas Butter's boss was giving feedback, you know what his feedback was? There is no business in Africa. People, they don't wear shoes. This is a true story. He said, no, these blacks are walking around with no shoes on. There's no market. Thomas Butter looked at this thing and says, how do I put shoes on all these feet? Gave up his job, started the shoe, Butter shoe. Where is it today? Everywhere. He saw a problem. And somebody else saw a nuisance. We're not talking about things that are not facts, my brothers and sisters. These are real things, right? So, always look for problems and try and come up with solutions. Whenever you think of an idea, business idea, ask yourself, what problem am I trying to solve? If you can't answer that question, think again. Think again. What problem am I trying to solve? Then the second question is, how big is that problem? And what solution can I come up with, right, to solve that problem? So when we identify opportunities and we're on the lookout for problems, there are simple questions that we just need to be asking ourselves. What I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to share the PDFs of this so that you guys can get them. I don't know, Pastor Dube, if you're going to be able to print them for them or give them electronically. So please don't break your wrists writing. This material is for me to you. This is how we add value to each other. So you get as much of the material as possible. But please do write notes so that some of those things, those thought starters, remain in your mind. Because usually, and I've always found, if I write something down for me, I can actually picture when I was writing it and I remember it, rather than something that I saw on a screen. If you ask me what I watched on TV yesterday, I can't really remember in detail, you know. So when we look out for problems, right, the questions we are asking, what are people in the general community, what are they saying they don't like? What are they saying they wish existed? Because if you're out there in the market listening to people, you hear these things. Hey, we don't like this way. Hey, but these taxes are like this, they're like that. These are problems. Societal, real problems. Right? What are people saying frustrates them? Hey, I hate waiting in the queue when I want to buy my lotto ticket. It's a problem. Right? What are people saying is just inconvenient to them? Now, if I had to transpose a business that has completely killed another industry, completely, is Uber. If we apply these questions to Uber, right, what are people saying they don't like? Let's go back to what was there before Uber, meter taxi. Right? I don't like the fact that when I get into a meter taxi, I don't know how much it's going to cost me to go from the airport to Albert. So I must guess, and then I must make sure I have cash enough to be able to do that. Uber solved that problem. Right? What are people saying they wish it existed? At that time, people were saying, hey, we wish that there was a taxi service where at least I know that the driver who's driving me doesn't have a criminal record. Because how many people used to get robbed from meter taxis? That's just another problem that Uber solved. Right? What are people saying frustrates them? Remember, with the meter taxi, sometimes you have to phone them on the landline and then they say, yeah, we're sending a taxi to you. But you don't know what time it's going to arrive. Guess what? Uber, if I ordered an Uber right now, it will tell you the driver is 6 minutes away. Problem solved. What are people saying is terribly inconvenient? It's terribly inconvenient for me to manage my time to get to the airport on time because this taxi service is not giving me enough information. Uber, it will tell you if you order the Uber now, you'll be at the airport in 20 minutes. Now, you ask yourself, why did the meter taxi service die? It died simply because Uber identified all the problems that were associated with catching a meter taxi. And they went through the list, ticking everything off and making sure it's all there. Now all the taxi industry in South Africa can do, the meter taxi industry, is to hijack and harass Uber drivers and all those things. But it's not working because the problem that Uber is solving is too big for these guys to do anything about. We will continue to use Uber. No, I can't. Because it's convenient.
That's right.
Just last night, I have a 16-year-old son. He's on holiday now. They had some party that they were attending with a friend of his who was staying over with us. I was preparing my workshop material. He didn't know that. He comes to me and says, Dad, please, can you go and drop us off in Santon and then pick us up at 10 p.m.? I said, my boy, I can't. Now, previously, I would never even dream of putting my son in a meter taxi. But guess what? The Uber app is on my phone. Type in the address, they are picked up. I can track until they are dropped off. 10 p.m., he calls me and says, Dad, we need to come back. Order another Uber. I track him right until he's at my doorstep. So I know my son is safe. Right? Now, how do you kill a business like that? They are solving a huge problem. And they are providing so many, we talk about value proposition design. They are adding so much value to my life because guess what? As a consultant and a trainer, the commodity that I trade is time. So my ability to then sit in my study and prepare this material for you added value to me. And I'm willing to pay you for that convenience. And now let's talk about solutions, right? These are some of the questions. Do potential customers solution, and that solution must be relevant to the people you want to solve the problem for. Otherwise, you don't have a business. Right? And then, is this a problem that I actually have the capability and capacity to resolve? Yes, we know that there is a huge electricity problem in South Africa. But ladies and gentlemen, let's be realistic. None of us can solve that problem. We are too small to solve the problem of that magnitude. Right? So we must be realistic about our capacity and our capability to solve the problem. Right? It's a healthcare problem. I don't think there are any doctors in the house. So we really wouldn't be able to directly solve that problem unless we have a consortium of doctors who we know and we could hlanganisa this thing and create a business out of it. Yes, then we can. Right. So when it comes to capability, it's also a question of, do I have the capability, or can I harness the necessary capabilities to be able to create that business? Then the other thing is it actually a problem worth solving? Is it relevant enough for me to create a business around it? Or is it just a temporary problem? How long term is this problem? And can I create a business around it? And then, if I did come up with a solution, are people willing to actually pay money for that solution? Right? And then lastly, having come up with that solution, would they actually buy it from me as opposed to someone else? Right? Those are all questions that we need to be asking ourselves. Now, a word of caution. Whatever solution that you are coming up with, right, to solve a problem of large magnitude, right, is your business scalable? Is that idea scalable? When you say scalable, is can you stretch it to grow? Can you go national? Can you go international? Do you go regional? Do you go provincial? Right? Those are things you need to think about. Your solution must also be unique enough to keep you in business. In other words, is your value proposition and your business model, are they sustainable over time? Or am I doing something that somebody can copy tomorrow and put me out of business simply because they have more money? And then the other thing as an entrepreneur that you must be very careful of is not to create another job which is disguised as a business. Let me repeat myself. Be very careful not to create another job, right, which is disguised as a business. Because what it means is that you are going to be chained to your business. Where your business is, we know you are there. And you cannot expand and do other things. So for example, when you do start small, let's say you start a restaurant. And the example I like to give, which is a practical example, is Nando's. Nando's started in Rosettenville, in the south of Joburg, as one restaurant. It was called Chicken Land. Right? These guys started this business. They worked on their recipe for their piri-piri sauce, and they were serving the community of Rosettenville. And then they realized, no, because we've managed to standardize, and the secret in our recipe is the sauce, right? We can open another shop. They opened one in Savoy, right? They opened one in Savoy, and what they did is they simply took the structure of what they were doing in Rosettenville and took it to Savoy and said to the staff there, you will do it exactly as it is done here. They did the same, and they did the same. Today, Nando's is a global business. Their head office is actually now in London. They're in the States, they're in Australia, they're in Dubai, they're everywhere. And if you go into any of those outlets, that chicken that you will eat is exactly the same. What have they done? They've managed to franchise their business. They've scaled their business. They don't need to be there. They don't need to be there. And franchising is possible with so many things. Chicken Licken is another business that started off as a single restaurant. Now it's franchised. Right? Because there's something unique, but they also have the vision to be able to say, how do we go beyond what we're doing in this locality so that we can grow. As I said when we began, we are on a journey. So my question at this point in time, are we still together? Are you still with me? Perfect. Maybe let's just take a short 5-minute break. Because if we took this as an equation and we said innovation is equal to invention plus commercialization, it means if we take away commercialization, we still have innovation. Or if we said innovation is equal to commercialization without invention, it's a times. So if either one of those two is 0, the result is 0. Because anything multiplied by 0 is 0. Right? So commercialization is the key to unlocking value from your invention. That thing that you've thought about, that new way of doing things, or that new product must be commercialized for it to be called an innovation. So commercialization now becomes the key. And that's where we start talking about the business model. Right. Now, you've heard all this. This is all jargon. But in simple terms, a business model simply is a way of describing how an organization creates, delivers, and captures value for their market. That's simply what a business model is. So regardless of how good your idea it is, how cool it is, the question ultimately remains, can it deliver value to the customer in a sustainable and profitable way? And that comes from having a viable business model. And a successful business model is made up of a delighted customer and sustainable profits. Now, we are going to go through a tool that we use in my consulting practice. And I must admit, I didn't invent this thing. It was invented by a company called Strategizer. I train and consult using some of their tools. I don't know if you guys have ever come across it, but it's this thing called the business model canvas. Now, the business model canvas is basically just a way of you, if you were sitting, and I'm going to share these resources so that you can print one out. And if you have a business idea, you can actually, on one sheet of paper, you can describe your entire business from start to finish and actually be able to look at it and say, is this thing going to make money or not make money? If I change this and I change that, will this thing balance out? So the business model canvas as a tool, right? It helps us answer 9 questions. And you'll see there are 9 building blocks that make up this canvas, right? Question number 1, who is the customer? Who are they? Can we describe who would typically buy our product? Number 1. Number 2, what value do we actually sell to this customer? Why do they buy from us as opposed to buying from someone else? What is so special? What value are we actually giving the customer? And that's your value proposition, right? Then we talk about customer relationships. How do we interact with our customers? Do we talk to them on a daily basis? Is it online? Do we have a sales rep who goes to see the customers? Right? That's all part of how you are building the architecture of your business. Right? Your channels, how do we deliver this value to them? Are we putting our product into a supermarket where a customer is going to buy it? Are we delivering this product direct to the customer? Or is this customer, if it's software, are they downloading it from our website? How do we deliver this value to the customer? All right? Revenue streams, commercialization. How do we actually earn money for the value that we provide? Do they pay for it? And if they pay for it, is it on a transaction basis? Is it a subscription service? You remember when we were talking about that idea of amakunya, to say, you can, this is now when we're talking business model. So remember, the guinya is still the same, right? But we've packaged it differently. We've put it in a nice box or a nice plastic, whatever the case might be, right? And we deliver it directly to our target market by going to their office and saying, there's your magwinya. But over and above that, right, we are saying, if you like magwinya every day, we're going to give you your 2 magwinya a day, and you only pay us at the end of the week. That is what we call business model innovation. I still am selling the same thing. It's the same guinya, it tastes the same from the corner of the street, but what I've done is I've taken that guinya from the corner of the street and I've brought it to your office. And I'm going to charge you extra for that. And you don't mind, because I'm giving you value. And the value that comes to the consumer is that, I don't have to do a stop when I get off my taxi before I get to the office to buy a magwinya. Oh, on my way, I must buy a magwinya, then I've got this hot magwinya sitting on my lap while I'm in a taxi for 30 minutes or an hour. So you are solving a problem. Everything. Now I'm telling you, whenever you think of anything, a business idea, or somebody says, hey, I'm thinking of doing this, first question, what problem are you solving? If they can't answer that question, there is no business. There is no business. Right? Then we go to what we call the other side of the business model, right? Where we start saying, what activities must we be good at doing? Our key activities, right? If you are making magwinya, the one thing that you must be good at is cooking. Otherwise, your magwinya tastes like sandpaper. There's no value proposition. It doesn't matter if you put it in the box and you put a ribbon on it. People don't want to eat it, right? So there's no business. So again, what are the key activities that we must be good at doing, right? Then the next thing is, what are our key assets? What things must we own to be able to deliver the value? So, hey, if we don't own a stove, then we can't deliver. If, for argument's sake, you're doing it in your local neighborhood, if we don't own some form of transportation, whether it's a bicycle or a wheelbarrow, for us to be able to move this thing to where we need to sell it, right? Those are key resources. People are key resources, right? So we're talking about human, material, financial resources that we need. Then the next thing is key partners. Who do we need who doesn't work for us, who is critical to us delivering the value that we want to deliver to the customer? In other words, flour supplier becomes very important for magwinya, because guinya doesn't exist with no flour. Oil, salt, sugar, right? All of that may be from different suppliers, but your key partner may be your local wholesaler where you get everything at once. But you have key partners, and those key partners must be able to help you to consistently deliver your value proposition. If your key partner goes out of business, right, what alternatives do you have? Because remember, now you are running a business and you are looking for continuity. So if you were getting your flour from a guy who brings it out the back at the local wholesaler, then the day he gets caught and is fired, guess what? Your business model is dead. Right? So we need to think about who is supplying us. And as we grow our business, will they be able to support us? So that's when we talk about key partners. And then we also talk about the cost structure of the business. Because all of these activities, all of these things that we're doing will cost money. Right? And the idea, if you had to think about the business model as being a stage where a play is being performed, Angiti, we have what we call the front stage, where you see the actors acting and they are doing Shakespeare or whatever, right? And then there's a curtain. And then there's the backstage, where people are running around, costumes and fixing people's makeup and all of those things, right? The audience doesn't get to see that stuff. So similarly, the business model is like a stage. It has a front stage. So if you look at the area highlighted in green, that's what people get to see. They see the value proposition. They experience the channels and all of those things, right? But then you have the backstage, right? Remember our key activities. One of our key activities is what? Cooking. Our customers don't get to see us cooking the magwinya back in the kitchen, right? They don't see how we interact with the guy who's selling us the flour and the oil and the sugar and all of it. That's all the backstage, right? Now, when you now are even in the process of ideating your new business, right? You should be able to get to a point where, right, you can determine whether the backstage of your business is equal to or less than in terms of cost than the front stage. If that is the case, then it means potentially your business can make money. But you then need to test. And we're going to talk about testing your business idea a little bit later. Right. Now, let's do a practical example. Let's go back to our friend Amin Suli Abubakar in Ghana, right? If we had to look at his entire business and see whether it's viable and whether it makes sense, right? Who would we say are his customers? The community, right? Again, when we go and look at the whole issue around solving a big enough problem, what is the population of Ghana? Can everybody guess? I think Ghana is probably made up of about 30 million people, roughly, right? Let's just assume that half of those people don't use charcoal, they use electricity or whatever. Yeah, you still got 15 million people. Let's say, for argument's sake, one bag of charcoal is worth $1. How big is this business? $15 million. Right. Already, as you are creating your business model, you already know. But also, as you are defining who is the customer, you now drill even deeper, because 15 million is a lot. But then we say, but who are the actual users of the charcoal? Generally, it's women, it's mothers. So we then say, okay, of those 15 million, how many would be women? Okay, let's narrow it down, 50-50, 7.5. You still got a $7.5 million business. Right. Now, what value are we offering these customers? Why are they buying from us? So what value is Amin giving to this community of women in Ghana who are using charcoal? I know you didn't look at the video in detail. Yes?
Easy to handle.
Yes.
And it is environment safe.
Exactly. So Amin is providing ready-made charcoal. You remember, if any of you have used charcoal, when you burn wood, you burn it and then it becomes charcoal, and then it continues to burn, then it becomes ash. But at the stage at which it makes charcoal is where it is most efficient. I know all the guys here who like braai. You know that your fire is at its best when there's no flame and the charcoal is red hot. So can you imagine the convenience and the time that you have given to a customer to say, no, instead of taking a log of firewood, lighting it, waiting for it until it becomes charcoal, then cooking. You've cut out that stage where if you light the charcoal, you're cooking. And if you've ever noticed, there's no smoke once your wood becomes charcoal. So you can actually cook with charcoal inside the house. You can actually cook with charcoal inside the house, which is what a lot of people in West Africa do. Right? So you've provided that convenience. Then over and above that, you've packaged it nicely. You've packaged it in such a way that if I need 4 blocks of charcoal, I take my 4 blocks and I close the bag and I put it away. So that's the value proposition. What are you doing? Because remember, charcoal is still being used in Ghana. Amin is not the only supplier of charcoal. But remember, if we go back to the example of Magwinya that we used, his charcoal is slightly different. He's added value to it and added convenience for the customer. Then we talk about channels, right? How would Sally deliver value to his customers? Right? It's not said in the video, but you would hazard a guess to say this guy, because of the packaging, he's probably going into the top supermarkets and wholesalers and service stations and all of these places, as opposed to his competitors who put it in a sack and sell it at the street corner. Right? So his channels are even different. Right? And all of this is speaking to his business model. What kind of relationship does he have with his customers? Right? Remember, this guy has added value to the community at large. He's solving two problems. And this is why his business is so successful. He's solving, number one, the problem of litter. He's saying to everybody, just bring all the coconut waste. Right? But at the same time, he's creating value by creating smokeless charcoal for his community. So he has a fantastic relationship with his customers and with his community. And then obviously he makes money by retailing and wholesaling his charcoal. Right? That's the front stage of his business canvas. Right? Key activities. What activities must he be good at? He must be good at manufacturing. He must be good at marketing. He must be good at distribution. Those are the things that drive his business. Right? We talk about what key assets must he have to deliver this value. He must have the equipment to produce this charcoal that if you put it on a white t-shirt, it doesn't stain. That charcoal that when people use it, there's absolutely no smoke. Right? So he needs to make sure that he has that resource. The other resource is actually the actual coconut husk. He needs that. Otherwise, there's no business. Right? But can you imagine, I mean, when I was chatting to him, it's amazing how profitable this guy is. Because you know what? All that waste, he gets it for free. His raw material, which usually raw materials, I mean, think about amagunya. Amagunya, you have to buy the flour. You have to buy the sugar, you have to buy the oil, you have to buy so many things. But his main ingredient is absolutely free because he's solving a problem. So, no, this guy is making money. He's making lots of money. I need to visit him in Ghana one of these days. Right. Key partners. Who are his key partners? You saw in the video, right? He's got people going around collecting and people bringing. Those are his key partners because they feed the raw material into him. But I mean, over and above that, his key partners would be the guys who supply him with the equipment. That equipment is working constantly. So he needs to make sure that his operation is efficient. If there's a breakdown, he needs as little downtime as possible, right? His packaging suppliers will supply him with the paper bags in which to put the charcoal. So you need to map all of these things when you're ideating around your business model, right? And then in terms of what he spends money on, well, he obviously spends money on marketing, you know, he spends his money on salaries and all of those overheads. But at the end of the day, right, his backstage costs him much less than the front stage. And therefore he has a sustainable business. Right? Now, business models do fail. And there are 4 fundamental reasons why business models will fail. The first and most important is when you have not answered the question, what problem are you solving? You're going to make something that nobody wants. Right? Let's think about some products in South Africa that were launched. Right? And then they disappeared in no time because nobody actually wanted it. Somebody came up with it and nobody wanted it. Can anybody think of some products? Sorry? Eton. That's a good one. I've never thought of that one. Yes. They try to force it down our throats and we say we don't want it. And we're not paying. And They've spent billions on those toll gates. Yeah. That's making something. We don't see what value those tolls add to our lives, other than taking money from our pocket. Right? Anyone else with a good example? I like that. I'm going to use that. I'll mention you when I say, no, this is not my idea, but I had this.
I once saw someone who was selling on some plastic things. You put them inside the plastic bag from shop. So like they help you carry the plastic.
Okay.
So instead of being like on your finger.
Oh, so okay.
Yeah, so
it never took off.
No.
And you know the interesting thing is that person was almost solving a problem, because it was a problem that your fingers get sore from, but something went wrong. Either it didn't market it properly, or it was too expensive, or it wasn't enough of a problem for people to actually say, okay, I'll buy that thing. Because guess what? What happens to that thing now when you get home and you finish shopping? You forget it. And then you go back to the shop the following day, now you must buy another one. But you left the other one at home. So those are all things that if this guy had experimented, he had a good idea. And it makes sense. But is it potentially viable or not? Listen.
Coal.
Sorry?
Coal, yes.
But if you look at it, coal is probably the most efficient at the moment way for us to generate power in Africa. And it's simply because people have mismanaged it. But Southern Africa has got enough coal to fire our power stations for the next 300 years. Right? The difference is that, and we're getting slightly political, but it's the truth. The difference is that if you look at Western economies were built on coal. Right? But today, they don't want Africa to use coal because they've run out of their coal. Coal is a finite resource. They have no more coal. Now they are trying to do solar, they are trying to do nuclear and wind and all of this. And those are expensive. And they're saying, no, Africa, you must stop doing coal. You must also invest in, how are we going, for us to catch up to them, we also need to use the coal. Now they say it's not environmentally friendly, but you guys were doing it for centuries and it was okay. Now all of a sudden it's not okay for us to do it. So, coal for me is something that is so critical to the development of Africa. It's there. And it's a God-given resource. It's on our land and you're saying don't use it. I will bet you that if we follow that example, right, in 20 years' time, they'll be back to mine that coal. Right? So are you addressing the right job? Then the second one is, do you actually have the right business model? Is your route to market actually the correct one? If you do your magwinya and you sit at the corner of the road, are you going to maximize your business? Because your business model is that I sit here and I wait for people to come. So if they don't come, I have no business. If I'm sitting where I'm sitting and it rains and the people don't come, there's no business. Right? So is your business model right? In other words, the way you create, capture, and deliver value, is it the right combination of things? Right? And then also, is the current context for your business model right? I've seen a lot of people who've come up with good business ideas, but those business ideas were in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's a good idea. It's a viable, potentially viable, very good business. But sometimes it's ahead of its time. So for example, Netflix today. Netflix is huge today. But if Netflix had tried to launch their business, which is a great business, if they had tried to launch this business 30 years ago, before high-speed internet, it would be dead. Because Netflix relies on high-speed internet connectivity for it to be successful. So context matters, because they could have come up with this idea, but 30 years ago it wouldn't have worked. So always look at your current context in terms of the environment, technology, legal issues. Is it legal for me to do what I'm trying to do now? Right? And it's contextual. There are companies right now that are making billions from cannabis because it's been completely legalized in those countries. Try and do that here and see if you last 2 weeks before the hawks come and raid your plantation. So context matters. Because yes, this business is potentially viable, but if I do it, I'll get arrested because this is an illegal activity. In South Africa, the law says, yes, you can grow one cannabis plant in the corner of your garden for your personal use, but you can't have a plantation. So that business model is already flawed. And then the other one, do you actually have the right skills and resources to execute your business model? Because it's all well and good to talk about it and to ideate and have this thing as a blueprint, but can you do it? Can you actually do it? Do you have the capability? And this is where, remember, you go back to your business model and you look at the entire model and say, are there customers? Can I do it? Do I have the right support structure to be able to do this consistently? Right? Key partners, key resources, key activities, all those things now fall into place. These are some global business model failures. Remember Kodak? Most of you are young. Some of us are now staring 50 down the barrel. But Kodak, right? Kodak failed to recognize digital photography. The most heartbreaking thing about Kodak is that, do you know that they're the first people to invent the digital camera? But they were making so much money out of film. Remember the film? Brown film, that one. Yeah, you take photos at a wedding and then you go, and when you develop, they tell you, wonka shile. How frustrating was that? Hey, when you think you've taken so many, and then when they develop it, everything comes out black. And those memories are gone. But Kodak actually came up with digital technology. And they decided, no. I will see this one later. Let's make money on film. And then they were overtaken. And today Kodak is a shadow of its former self. It used to be, now Kodak, they are doing, they do passport photos, and it's sad. It's so sad. But Kodak, Eastman Kodak was one of the biggest organizations in the States as a company. Do you guys remember Blockbuster? The guys who used to do videotapes. Yeah? They thought their big physical network of stores was enough to please customers. But guess what? The VCR died. Then it was taken over by the DVD player. Then they went into DVDs. And then before you know it, Netflix was there. Now here's the sad thing. When Netflix was still a startup, Netflix went to Blockbuster and said, please, can you buy us? This is what we are trying to do. And Blockbuster was like, no, we don't have time for you. So now we've got networks of stores all over the world. We don't need you. Where's Blockbuster today? It does not exist anymore at all. Netflix over COVID was one of the fastest growing businesses in the world because of live streaming. Toys R Us failed to exploit online shopping. But what they didn't realize that Toys R Us was nothing. A retailer is only as good as the merchandise that they carry. Now, here's Toys R Us, arrogant. No, we've got the biggest network of toy stores, right? But none of those brands belong to them. They were simply providing shelf space. And so when Lego said, hey, we can make more money by selling our products online because we don't have to give a markup to Toys R Us. They went online. And the next toy manufacturer, online. online. Before you know it, Toys R Us, poof, gone. Similar story in the South African context. Who last went into Dion Wire? Doesn't exist anymore. Why? They don't have their own brands. They were carrying Samsung, LG, all of these. Now, I can go to takealot.com and buy myself an LG TV. And I have the convenience of paying for it. If I buy a big one, 34,000 for a TV, they deliver it to my doorstep. I plug it in for a week, I look at it and I say, I don't like it, I phone them and I say, come and take it. Do you know why I couldn't provide that service? And guess what? I'm also paying a discount for the TV that I bought on Takealot because it's not renting shelf space in Dion Wire. Gone. And this is simply a business model failure. What Dion Wire could have done is they could have said, no, we're opening an online store, right? They don't carry any stock. The stock sits at Samsung. But when you buy through Dion Wire, they phone Samsung and say, listen, can you send a TV to Pastor Dube's house? They still would have been making money. But they were arrogant and they thought because we've got this network of stores across South Africa, we don't need. And Takealot said, thank you very much. And now they don't exist. Nokia, same thing. Right? Software on phones, smartphones. No. 3310 is the best thing ever. Where's Nokia today? Shadow of its former self. BlackBerry is even worse. BlackBerry was like, no, we have a closed user network. Remember those days, if you didn't have BBM, you didn't have a BBM pin, you are nothing. Android came and said, oh, so all of these other people without BBM need something. Let me give them and let's ignore BBM. Where are they today? Gone. So the nice thing about business models is that research, and that's what us academics do, we're constantly testing and validating concepts and looking at things. So there are 55 business model patterns that have been discovered. And these business model patterns are at our disposal. These things are free. At our disposal as entrepreneurs to be able to look at and modify and actually adopt to our own businesses. Let me give you a couple of examples. So there's what they call it the razor and blade business model pattern. The guys in the room will understand what I'm talking about, especially when it comes to Gillette. Now, with Gillette, when you go and buy a Gillette razor for the first time, it's cheap. They give you a handle and they give you maybe 1 or 2 blades to use. Then you take it home and you shave and you get a nice experience, right? Thereafter, you need to buy the blades. That's when you start paying rent. Because on that Gillette handle, you can't use any other razor blade other than a Gillette. That's where they fix you. That's where they fix you. So the idea behind that business model is that you create a basic product, right? You offer it at a bargain price, sometimes even below cost, sometimes even free, right? But the additional products needed to make that product work. That's where you make your money, right? So you buy in customer loyalty by offering something that is seemingly free and then you take afterwards, right? Now, here's the thing. HP with inkjet technology simply went and copied exactly the same thing. They copied the pattern, right? Think about it. If you buy an inkjet printer today, you can get one for as cheap as 800 Rand. And it will come with a couple of cartridges, but you won't even use up 1 ream of bond paper before it's finished. Then go back and buy cartridges and see how much those things are. But guess what? You've invested in the printer and you can only use an HP cartridge on that thing, so you are locked in. What they did, they simply observed a pattern from a completely different industry and copied it, right? Nespresso did the same thing with coffee, right? Do you know those little Nespresso machines? They don't cost a lot of money, right? Those little capsules, you are paying 300% more per gram than if you bought instant coffee, but people don't know that. But once you've bought the machine, what do? You can't leave it now as an ornament in your kitchen. You now must use it, and you're paying through the nose for those capsules. What did they do? They simply copied what Gillette was doing. So these are patterns. These are business model patterns. There are 55 of them, but I'm only going to share 3 with you, just to get your mind understanding that you can be in one industry and look at a pattern, a way of doing things, and apply it to a completely different. Here we're going from personal care to technology to food, using exactly the same pattern, right? The other one is what we call a two-sided or multi-sided platform. This is very simple. A platform is basically a central point where you link buyers with sellers, and you make money in the middle, and you control the relationship between the two. Uber is a platform. Uber is one of the biggest companies in the world in the transportation industry, but they do not own a single vehicle. These guys were clever. They said, you know what? We can link riders with cars. In Rona, we control the relationship and basically play referee. Right? But here's a simple one. If you go to Joburg Fresh Produce Market, what is that? It's a platform. Do they farm any vegetables at Joburg Fresh Produce Market? They link buyers and sellers, and then they charge people for rent, entrance fees, whatever it is that they charge, and they make money. Right? So your Ubers, your Amazons, if we go to the South African context, Takealot. Takealot.com does not own a single product. In fact, people think they've got huge warehouses all over the place. They don't. Right? You place an order for a TV today on Takealot, they place an order on Samsung, and then they deliver it to you. What are they doing? They're linking buyers and sellers and making a profit in between. Right? Mr. Delivery. They don't make burgers. What do? They link McDonald's with a buyer, and they're in the middle, and they provide that service. Now, as you are thinking about whatever business idea you have, there's a pattern. There's a pattern. Right? The last one, which pertains to what our friend Sally is doing, is called trash to cash. Is basically taking rubbish, which is getting for free, and making money hand over fist. Collect a can. Well, they collect all these aluminum cans, and then they sell them to a foundry. The foundry makes another can out of it, and the cycle continues. Right? So, as you discover the problems that you are seeing out there in the market, try and see if you can find a unique pattern by which you can deliver that value proposition differently to what everyone else is doing. Whatever it is you're thinking, try and think innovatively around, how do I do this differently? Even if I'm not changing the actual product, how do I change the delivery? How do I change the payment method? How do I change how I engage with the customer? How do I make this slightly different? Right? And like I'm saying, there are so many patterns. And usually, the clever people are the ones who actually look beyond the industry. Look beyond what is currently being done. Because if you go into an industry to do what everyone else has been doing, you're playing. Uber would never have disrupted the metered taxi industry if they went in and also said, we've got metered taxis. But they went in and they saw, no, there's lots of problems. So as you analyze the industry, you're saying, what problems are there currently in this industry? Right? And how can I come up with a pattern, a methodology of doing things differently that is sustainable over time? Right. Are we still together? Yes. Okay. I think we can take a refreshment break, and then we can come back.
owns the internet? It's public goods. The internet itself is like fresh air. No one can own it because it's too big and too important now to humanity for anyone to be able to own it. But the internet came about and created businesses and demand and all sorts of things that didn't exist before, right? But no one owns it. The previous invention that I can think of that came up, which became a commodity, is the wheel. Who owns the wheel? Today I can cut out something and make myself a wheel. But it's a piece of technology which is so important to humanity that no one can own it. But that happens once in a lifetime, that somebody can create something which doesn't have an immediate demand but goes on to be a very important invention. So us mere mortals who cannot come up with such breakthrough technologies have to ask the question, who said they wanted this product? Did you talk to them? Did they say they wanted it? And if they said they wanted it, how much did they say they are prepared to pay for it? Those are all painful questions that an entrepreneur must ask themselves. Because guys, we need to make reality our friends. Can it be done? So if we just have a quick refresher on the business model canvas, which we looked at now, it describes how the organization creates, captures, and delivers value, right? And it's basically a way of showing on one page, right, how your business will work, the different parts of your business will work together to create that value, right? It's a tool that allows you to play with your key activities, your resources. You can play around with those things, change them, so you can see conceptually how your business will work before your business even exists. Say, this is how it's going to work. And do all these things talk to each other, and do they make sense? Now, the value proposition, if you remember from the 9 building blocks, the value proposition part and the customer segment part, that's the center of your business model. And out of that, right, comes what we call your value proposition canvas. Now, why is value proposition important, design important? It describes the benefits that your customers are going to get from your product or service, right? It's very important that you match those benefits, right, with the customer so that there's a fit between what you are providing and what the customer is getting. And understanding your customers better, right, will give you the right feedback for you to design the right products. Don't sit in your kitchen and decide that you are going to make a mkombuti flavored magwinya because you think in your head that is dawazonke zasetokoza will like this one. Who told you? Did you test it? Did you ask them? Right? Classic example from my working life. Big company like Coca-Cola. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember when Coca-Cola came up with a product called Fanta Tropical Punch, which was this funny green color and tasted terrible. A big company like Coca-Cola actually made the mistake of creating a product without checking if people wanted it. And I remember the one time, I was still in Zimbabwe at the time, but this product was launched across Africa. We had to employ people to sit and open bottles and pour it down the drain because we even failed to give it away. That's how bad this product was. Right? So, always ask yourself, is there a match between the benefit and the customer need? So value proposition design is part of your business model. It's in your business model, right? And that's the part where you match the needs with what you provide. So there's a canvas similar to the business model canvas that comes out of that, and we call it the value proposition canvas. It's made up of 2 sides, right? It's made up of the one side where we say you observe. your customer segment, right? You look at the customer profile and you get to understand the customer and what the customer needs. Then the other side, which looks like the South African flag, right? This one, right? Is where you actually design. It's called the value map. That's where you actually now start designing the product for your customer. So you start with observation. So you start with observation, then you create, and then you achieve a fit between these two things, right? To create your value proposition. Now, the customer profile, or your customer segment, if you've ever heard of customer segmentation, right? It describes specific customer segment in your business model in a more detailed and structured way. You remember that time when we were discussing Sally's target market, and we said if we take the entire population of Ghana, 30 million, then we say, okay, let's say half of them use electricity, we're left with 15, right? But when we say reasonably, of those 15, most of those customers will be women. And then we drill down and we said, okay, let's just say 7.5, right? You may even drill down even further and say, okay, of those women, how many of them actually would use charcoal? And we might split that down and be left with 5 million. We still have a viable business, $5 million. That's still a viable business. But now we are drilling down to the consumer to the point that you can almost paint a picture of the typical person who would use your product. That's what it must come down to, right? And then it then breaks down this customer into what we call jobs to be done, pains and gains. Now, a professor of mine put it very nicely. He actually said people don't buy products. People actually hire products to do a specific job. Is that not right? If you buy a car, are you buying a car or are you buying the functionality that that car provides? So you're actually buying the car to do a specific job. For some people like me, it's transportation. I must go from 4 ways to Togoza. For some people, it's an emotional job. So I have a big G-Wagon so that I feel good. And others, it's a job. This guy's ego needs to be pumped. So for him, it's important enough for him to spend 2.5 million rand on that car for him to feel like the big man. That's a job that's being done. It's an emotional job. A silly one, but it's a job that's being done. So we look at the jobs to be done. So whenever you are thinking around a product, what job is it doing? Because that customer is actually hiring it. They're not buying it because they want to have it. People don't just want to have things. There must be a job that's being done. When we purchase school fees, when we purchase education for our kids, there's a specific job that we're expecting to be done by that school for our children, which is education. So if you think about any product or service on this earth, you do it so that it does a specific job. This laptop, if I could do what I could do without the laptop, I would do it. So, but I can't present to you effectively without the laptop. So the laptop is doing a job. It's been employed by me to do a presentation. Another person will buy the same laptop, but for him, it's for entertainment. Because he wants to play games on it. Do you see what I mean? Right. Then, when we look at our customers, we also look at the pains. And these pains are describing the things that annoy our customer before, during, and after they get that job done. Going back to our example of Uber, can you imagine the number of customer pains that Uber solved by providing their service? And then the gains then describe the positive outcomes that the customer wants out of that. So for example, one of the gains that I get from the use of this laptop, right, is the ability to communicate with you effectively and for you to get the knowledge from me. Not so. Exactly. So if we talk about jobs to be done, like I was saying, these are tasks that your customer is trying to get done. Let's use a different example that we haven't used, right? Let's just say, let's call our hypothetical entrepreneur, let's call her Alice. So Alice realizes that there's a problem in Thokoza when it comes to aftercare for children whose parents have got jobs from 9 to 5. What to do with these kids? Let's say these kids are from the age of the grade 1 sort of age to grade 7. These kids finish school at 1 p.m., right? There's no one at home. So there's a problem. Then Alice says, okay, the problem is that there are children who have no care for them between the hours of, say, 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. Right? That's a problem. Okay. Now, how do I go about solving that problem? Right? And so now you get to the point where you are now looking at the jobs to be done. What kind of job would be done here? Okay, these kids probably require homework supervision. They may require a meal. They may require even to be bathed and prepared so that the parent comes, picks up their child, and their child is ready to basically be put to bed or whatever the case might be. Now you need to know the jobs to be done, right? What problems are they trying to solve? What needs are they trying to satisfy? And like we said, those jobs can be functional jobs, they could be social jobs, they could be emotional jobs. It just depends on what the customer need is. Right. We also talked about customer pains, those annoyances. What is preventing the customer from getting their job done? What is annoying them? What presents risks, potentially bad outcomes for them? And then the gains. What is the positive outcome that they want? And again, these same gains could be emotional gains, right? One of the emotional gains that a mother would have from having a child at aftercare is just peace of mind. And you are charging that person for peace of mind by providing that service. Part of the functional benefits is the fact that their child is clean. When they come out of aftercare, they've been bathed and they've been put in their pajamas or whatever the case might be. It's a functional job from the same service. And then when we go across now to the value map. Now the value map is where now as an entrepreneur, you now become creative. This is the time now where you decide to say, after identifying these jobs, pains and gains, right? What am I interested in solving? What am I capable of fixing? What is relevant? Because there's no product on earth that is easy for zonke. I don't care what you say about Poseidon, it doesn't work for everything. There's no magic formula, there's no product that solves everybody's problem, right? So you as the entrepreneur now, based on your capability, your interest, your passion, then decide, this is the product that I'm going to create, and it's going to address this pain, this gain, and address this job to be done. So the value map is then made up of the products and services, which is a list of what you are doing within your capabilities. The pain relievers. Remember, where there's a customer pain, you must bring the grandpa. It's the pain reliever, right? And where there's a customer who wants a gain, you must put a gain creator. So these things all talk to each other across the value map and the customer profile. Right? We've discussed the issue around products and services. Those are the actual things that you are going to help to get the jobs done. So your products and services talk to the jobs. Right? And where you need to be careful, right, is that not all products and services have the same relevance to the customer. So you need to ask questions. Some things that you think are critical to the consumer are actually not as critical. And the only way you can find out is by talking to customers. Get out of the building and actually interview customers so that you can design something that they want. Because the worst mistake that entrepreneurs make, ladies and gentlemen, is that sometimes we create this thing called waste by providing bells and whistles and all sorts of features that people actually don't want. They want the most basic thing. We'll discuss it a little bit later on when we talk about how you test your business idea. There's this thing called a minimum viable product. Funny enough, as I was chatting to Pastor Dube during the break, he was telling me about how the church started in a small tent and then went on to a bigger tent, and today here we are in this magnificent facility, right? But it comes back to testing and validating your concept. Can you imagine if he had decided to just come and start from this building? On what basis would he have been investing in such infrastructure without a congregation? Right? So the principles that we're discussing here, right, apply in so many areas of life. It's similar to, and I always like to use the examples of cars. It's like somebody buying an S-Class Mercedes-Benz when they actually need a Toyota Hilux. All those features, heated seats, music, DVD players, air freshener, all of those things are irrelevant because I want to move my ship from Polokwane to the market. And I can't do it in a Mercedes, right? So zero in on what the customer needs are at their most basic level. And if there's anything missing, you talking to your customer, you will get feedback. No. This Toyota Hilux, yes, it's a very basic bakkie, but I would also like power steering, which is also on the Mercedes. This Toyota bakkie, you know, it gets hot in Polokwane. Can you also put air conditioning similar to the Mercedes? But remember, the features that then will go on the Hilux are specific to that customer's needs. No need for air freshener and heated seats and massaging seats and all of those other things, because that just creates waste. And can you imagine if your customer was already willing, he needed a Hilux, right? But you gave him a Mercedes. If he was willing to pay the price of a Mercedes, but he doesn't need all these features, how much more money would you make as an entrepreneur? Because all those added features that you've added onto the product, you would eliminate. They were a cost to you, so they go to your profit. So don't give the customer what they didn't ask for. Lesson number 1. So as you ideate a product, get to the basic product which would solve the problem, offer it to customers, and the customers will give you feedback. Start a catering company, start with the most basic of meals. Don't offer a menu like the Michelangelo. 2-3 basic meals. See how it goes. The customers will tell you, no, you can't just be giving us pap every day, rice once in a while. Then you know, okay, fine, rice. No, pap and food daily. You know, put some chicken here and some force, and you start adding things, but you know that the customer actually wants these things. Then the pain relievers, right? The pain relievers must correspond with the pains that you identified with your customer. Fix those, right? But remember, you can't fix everything. Fix those that are most important and most relevant, and the ones that you are most capable of fixing. Then the gain creators, right? You don't have to provide every single benefit that the customer wants, but you need to figure out which ones are the most important, right? And solve those. So if we go back to the video that we saw, right? And we look at that Chamak, the laundry service, right? Let's look at some of the pain relievers, right? 24-hour turnaround time for laundry. No need for reliance on good weather to get laundry done, because these guys have got dryers and all of those things. There's a collection and delivery service. That's a big pain reliever. Because can you imagine, every time you must go there, drop off clothes, come back, then go back there to pick up the clothes. These guys are like, no, we'll come, we'll pick up, we deliver, 24 hours. And we charge you for it. Yeah? And then the proper care of garments, because, in the video it was saying the guy didn't know which ones are dry clean, which ones are normal wash. You just give them their laundry, they'll sort it out for you. Right? As a result of that, you then get gains. Right? The gain creators, time saving on the task of doing laundry, meaning more freedom. You can imagine, for a guy like me who sells time for a living, right? That for me would be perfect. I mean, if I can buy myself another couple of hours to do my work as opposed to doing laundry, what a convenience. Right? Savings on electricity, water, detergents, because these guys are doing things on an industrial scale and they're using more efficient equipment to do these things. Right? Things are expertly washed and ironed. Hey, Bana, I hate ironing. I'm terrible at it. Your clothes are provided, packed, ironed, ready to just put in your closet. Right? And then there's the whole issue around predictability. The weather out there has got nothing to do with you getting your laundry done. These guys will get your laundry done whether the monsoon rain is coming down for 3 months. You're going to get clean, dry, hygienic clothes. So, as we craft and put together these products that we want to provide our customers, these are the things that we constantly need to have in our minds. Are we creating something that somebody actually wants and something that somebody wants to pay for? And like I said at the beginning, you need to then find the fit between your customer profile and your value map. What your customer wants and what you are providing. Jobs, pains, and gains versus products, pain relievers, and gain creators. Okay, so are we still together? Excellent. Let us move on. So, when I meet entrepreneurs that I coach most of the time and we have our first meeting, sometimes they think I'm a horrible guy because I ask very painful questions. But for me, it's what I call tough love. Because if we can't be realistic about what we're doing, then we are fooling each other. Right. So, one of the key things that I get from any guy wanting to start a business, and I'm sure you guys will say it, what is the thing you need the most when you start a business? Capital. That's nonsense. After all that we've learned, guys, you still want to come back and tell me that money is what you need the most? Come on, guys. Come on, guys. I thought I was preaching to the choir here. Problems. It's got to be a problem. Not money. I can give you money for a crazy idea that's not going to work. I can give you 100 million and it still won't work. So I always say, when an entrepreneur comes to me and I say, what are the challenges you're facing in the business, etc., etc., the minute they mention money, I tell them, listen, go back and think about it, then come back to me. Because that's not your problem. Right? Any good idea will attract capital. Any good concept will attract capital. So capital is not the resource that you need to get going. In fact, I've had situations where, because I sometimes invest in small businesses, where a guy comes to me with a business plan this thick, and he says to me, hey, Bana, I've got this thing. This thing will set the world on fire. We're going to make money. And then I asked him, can you show me one paying customer? Just one. One customer who has bought your product or service consistently. Then I know there's a business. Who have you invoiced? No, man, I don't have the capital, so I haven't started. So I'm saying, so there's no business. So what am I investing in? Either I'm just investing in you and your vision, but I'm not investing in a business, because there is no business that exists. So let's talk about testing and validating your business idea. Now, we've gone through a journey where there's an idea, we ideate, then we build a business model on paper, we look at our front stage, backstage, all of those nice things that we saw, and this thing looks good, right? We refine our value proposition in the sense that we're saying, no, our customers, we've studied them, this is exactly what they want, and this is what we're going to provide them. Okay, what's next? We need to test. We need to test. Business is almost like, what you call it? It's almost like it's an experiment. You don't know how it's going to turn out. But the only way you can figure it out is to test it by experimenting. And experiment on a small scale so that you don't risk yourself. So the question should not be, can this product be built? What should the question be? Should this product be built? Because if we answer the question, should it be built, then it means that there is a demand for it. Can it be built? Anything in this world today can be built. With the technology that we have, you can build anything you want. But should it be built? Is it going to add any value to society as society sits today? Right? Can we build a sustainable business around that product? Because it's all well and good to come up with this nice concept, but is there a business that you can build around it? And the only way to answer this question is to get out of the building and speak and engage with real paying customers. Now, how do we do that? So, startup itself is something that is in search of something which is scalable. You're looking for a scalable business model so you can grow your business. It's an experiment. So you make certain assumptions when you start. For example, if we talk about, what did we call it? Alice and her daycare aftercare center, right? She's got a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a guess. She guesses, right, that there is enough demand in this Togoza community for her to start an aftercare center. That's a guess, and that guess carries with it certain assumptions. She is assuming that there will be enough people for her service, and she's also assuming that they're willing to pay for it. But all those things are where? In her head. So as a business coach, my question would be, okay, fine, I understand your hypothesis and I buy into your assumptions. So what? I'm still not going to give you a cent, because you haven't shown me that there is a business. So your job as the entrepreneur now is to test this hypothesis, right? Through experimentation and validation. So experimentation is in the doing, and validation is then to say, okay, this is what I thought would happen. Is this what happened? If it didn't happen, why didn't it happen, and what can I do to change it, to alter it? Right? So we need to test whether this product actually delivers the value that we think it's going to deliver. And then we must also test to see whether this opportunity is big enough to justify us investing our time and effort. So starting up, as opposed to what a lot of people think. I mean, back in the day, people used to say, no, when you come up with an idea, you put your idea in the form of a business plan, and then when you put it in the form of a business plan, you go to the bank, you present your business plan, then the bank gives you money, and then you make money. Simple. Wouldn't we all be rich if life was that simple, right? So this, they call it a waterfall, saying ideate, plan your business, develop the product, and then launch. And then all of us are making money like Elon Musk. It doesn't exist. How the process actually works is like that, right? Where we start here, we create something, we must test if it works. Then we learn from our experiment or our test. If our test is successful and confirms our hypothesis, then we can go there and we can scale the business. But if in the learning process we realize we need to fix things, we then iterate, we go back to the testing phase and we start again. So think about it even with the example of amagunya. We play around with different recipes, give them to people. Do you like this one? Do you like this one? This one, no, this one's got too much dough. This one, you put too much oil in it. No, your frying temperatures are wrong. That's how you get to the point where you create something that people actually want, because you're getting feedback from the market. So planning really is a tool that's used in an environment where things are just stable. But what's stable about this world? Can you imagine somebody at the beginning of last year, January, who came with a business plan and left it on a banker's desk in January? Then Uncle Cyril called the family meeting at the end of March and said lockdown. What happens to that business plan? Blown out of the water. But if that entrepreneur was not looking at their business from that perspective, but was looking at it from that perspective, then they could easily come back to the bank and say, yeah, I know COVID has come, but I'm changing my business model because I'm going to do things online. Or, I'm going to do things in a different sort of way. But now when you've got that 300-page document, the bank just says, hey, Baba, COVID has come, no money for you. Right? So we need to always have this learning mindset, right? Which we call validated learning, right? You need to focus on a process. That same process that I showed you, where you ideate, then you take a leap of faith and you build. And when you build what I termed the minimum viable product. Don't go and do the Mercedes-Benz. Just do the basic buggy and offer it to the client. Then the client will give you feedback. And that's where you then measure. What feedback am I getting? What insights am I getting? What am I learning? Right? If you are in a situation where your learning is giving you positive signals, you go back up there and then you now build at scale. Now I've got the perfect recipe. I can now make a batch of 200 magunya. And I'm certain that my market will like it because I've tested, I've asked people, do you like it this way? Do you like it that way? And I found the middle ground in terms of what my customers would prefer to have. But similarly, if I then learn that no, things need to change, we do what's called a pivot. Let's change the way we do things. If originally I wanted to sell magunya from a small store and now people are locked down at home, do I do home delivery? Now we are changing our business model. We're changing our channels, we're changing our customer relationships to make things work. But if you are rigid in your thinking, you're not going to go far. So we talked about the minimum viable product, right? It's a product with the minimal amount of effort and cost that's used to test specific assumptions about the validity of your idea. If you guys will remember, trying to think of an easy example. I happen to use an Apple phone, right? If you had to trace where the Apple phone was born from, you'll be amazed. And how Apple, and it explains how Apple is such a successful company, right? So Apple originally was into computers, and then they didn't do as well as the IBMs and all of these at that time. Now they are doing well, but at that time they were not doing very well. Then they decided to go into music. And what they did is that they created this platform called iTunes. Now with iTunes, they were very clever. What they realized is they saw a problem. Do you remember back in the day? I don't know how many of you will remember. Some of us, we used to buy LPs and CDs. So you go and buy Rex Rabanye's CD, but the only song you want is Onket's song. The rest you don't like them, but you're forced to buy the album and you only listen to one song. So Apple went to music companies and said, listen, if you allow us to use MP3 technology, which Apple didn't even invent, if we use MP3 technology, would you allow us to break up an album and sell the songs $1 at a time? In other words, if somebody's on the iTunes platform, they can go to an album and just say, I want this song. Go to another artist, another album and say, I want this song, and they build their own playlist. It's stuff that we do every day now. But can you imagine? This is 10, 15, 20 years back. So Apple started iTunes, and their concept was 1,000 songs in your pocket. But then they were a little bit cleverer, because what they then did is they took an MP3 player and put it together with iTunes, and they called it the iPod. So now they had a device which somebody had as many songs as they wanted at their convenience. I don't know if any of you will remember the Walkman. The Walkman was a cassette player similar to an MP3 player. It was a personal music player. But now you've got this tiny thing called iPod. Building on iPod, right? So remember now, you've got MP3 technology, you've got the iPod, right? And you've got iTunes. So Apple said, the way the world is moving right now is pretty much everything is being put onto a phone. Cameras, notebooks, all sorts of things, dictionaries, internet browsers. So what Apple then did is that they took a cell phone, they took the iPod, they took iTunes and an internet browser, put them together and called it iPhone. And that is why Apple is one of the most successful telecoms company in the world, because they are good at business model innovation. They never created anything new. The smartphone was already there before Apple. The internet browser was already there. MP3 technology already existed. The only thing that they actually came up with, which was clever, was iTunes. But today, I have my iPhone. It's impossible for me not to upgrade to a new iPhone, because guess what? Over the last 10 years, all my music, all my contacts, all my stuff is sitting on iTunes. If I went to Android, I lose everything. So they've created a customer for life out of me. I have no choice. Until one day, I've got over 16,000 songs on my iTunes, and it's taken me a while to build that music collection. I will lose it if I go to Android. So I'm stuck. Steve Jobs died many years ago, but from his grave, he will continue to make money out of me. Isn't that clever? So we talk about a minimum viable product. iTunes was the minimum viable product, but look what it created for Apple. So why must we build this minimum viable product? Before we can sell successfully to the mass market, we must sell it to early adopters. Because you must remember that when we talk about customer jobs, pains, and gains, right? Remember, pain is relative. If I pinch you and I pinch him, your level of pain will be different. So now, in your customer base, where you are wanting to experiment with your product, right? There are some people who are in excruciating pain and some who are feeling less pain. If we go to Alice's example of the daycare center, right? Can you imagine a single working mom with 3 kids? She works from 9 to 5. And these kids are somewhere between grade 1 and grade 7, right? Imagine her pain of aftercare compared to a married couple where, both of them work decent jobs, they have cars and what have you. The pain is less. So when you are now starting to experiment, who would you go to first? You'd go to the single mom who is in the most excruciating pain, right? And offer her that basic product. And maybe initially the basic product is that I have a small building and your kids just come and they are left to their own devices. But they can't live and wander in the streets. Bring them with their own lunch and we'll just observe them. Now, you will start getting feedback from that lady to say, hey, can you not feed my child? Right? Can you not wash them? Can you not help them with their homework? Right? All those things now, from the minimum viable product, you are starting to build. But remember, with each additional service, you are charging a premium. As opposed to if Alice had gone and started a daycare center with a PlayStation, jacuzzi for the kids, that's all waste and should have charged probably the same price. But now you have a situation where you're saying, okay, mama, so you want meals. Meals will cost you X amount. You want homework supervision, it's going to cost you X amount. And that's why a minimum viable product is so important to avoid waste, and it allows you to add features into your product. It may be a situation where she ends up dividing her aftercare into, no, I have some aftercare kids who have meals. Some just want homework supervision. Customization is the future. People want products that are made specifically for them and their needs. And that's why, for example, in the motor industry, if you go and you decide you want to buy a brand new BMW, they give you the basic car. Everything else there, after that, is an additional feature which you pay for. Sunroof, fagimal. Leather seats, fagimal. Automatic gear, fagimal. Right? And that's why at the end of the day, I always say to people, if you're going to buy a BMW, buy a used one. Because the other guy paid for all the features in advance. Because when you buy it, you're saying, hey, Baba, I never said put a sunroof. Now I'm just buying the car. Right? So that's why a minimum viable product is okay. And your first paying customers, they will accept an 80% solution to relieve that pain. Right? You don't need a perfect solution. They will use their imagination to fill out what's missing on the product, and they will give you feedback. Then you can then build on your product. Then a lot of people say, yeah, but what about quality? What if I produce something which is poor quality? It's risky for you to assume that because you haven't sold anything yet. So do that thing with your assumption of quality. The market will tell you, the customer will tell you what quality is. Yeah? And then as you build your minimum viable product, right? Make sure you just remove any feature, process, or effort that doesn't contribute to what you are seeking to learn. Because remember, with your minimum viable product, we're not yet scaling our business. We're not yet in fully fledged production. We want to learn. We want to learn what does the market want. So let's not worry about, too many things. That basic thing is what's going to be able to tell us. Pastor Dube started with a tiny little tent, testing his concept to say, are there believers in Togoza who are willing to attend a church where services are given in the Queen's English? And he tested his concept and went into a bigger tent, and here we are today, speaking the Queen's English. Right? That is, guys, this is practical stuff. People are doing it, but they're doing it subconsciously, not knowing that they're actually doing it. But that is the correct way of doing something. Start small, test, modify where you need to modify, change. So that by the time you are done, right, you are certain that you are providing something that your target market actually wants. And once you do that, it's now time to scale. Are you still with me? Okay. At the point where we want to now commercialize and scale our business. We've ideated, we've interrogated our business model, we've tested our idea, we know our value proposition works, we've tested with a few paying customers, and now we want to set the world on fire. And that's where the actual real work starts, right? Repetition. Remember, we're talking experimentation. Now we're saying we've experimented, now we need repetition. We now need to be able to do what we were doing over and over and over and over again consistently. Now, how do we make sure that yesterday's taste the same as today's? And so on and so on and so on. When you walk into a McDonald's or a KFC, you already know what you are going to eat. You know what it's going to taste like, right? Because they have a consistent way of cooking whatever meal it is that you want. So now that you found something that works successfully on a small scale, your objective now is to repeat it as quickly and as efficiently as possible to drive your revenue. Now, is your venture scalable? And this is where we ask the following questions. 1, do I have the right team in place to be able to drive that? Right? Because, like we said earlier, there's no such thing as a lone entrepreneur who does everything on their own. So do I have the right team in place? Do I have the critical resources required now? Because remember now, we are taking something that we did initially in the kitchen, and maybe now we are trying to do it on an industrial scale. Will that recipe still work on a batch of 2,000 makunya? Or does something have to change? Do I have the right systems and processes in place? Because all of a sudden, right, Alice is no longer serving 2 or 3 mothers. She's now serving 40, 50 families. So now, can she still manage to consistently provide the same service that she was providing when she was experimenting on a larger scale? And this is where a lot of businesses fail, on systems and processes, right? Particularly when it comes to accounting and customer management, right? How do we track our progress? How do you know if you're doing well? Does it mean if you sold 50 magunya last week, and this week you sell 100, and then next week you sell 200, the following week you sell 300, are you succeeding? Who would say you are succeeding by show of hands? Are you failing? So what are you doing? I want answers. I want answers.
I'm saying you are succeeding at the moment because there are no complaints.
Anyone else?
I think it depends. I think it depends on whether, like you said, it's written on the board, like the cost that you incur to produce that much. Because sometimes you make more, but like you're not making as much profit in proportion to your costs.
So remember, your business is not just about revenue. We've got the front stage and the back stage. So by selling 200 makwini, are you covering your costs? Those are things now you, as an entrepreneur, as you scale up, because now when you're scaling up, you're trying to make profit. When you were testing and validating your concept, profit was not the objective. Learning was the objective. Now the objective is to make money. Asebenzele mahal. Right? Now, so 200 magwinya a week is no longer the metric that you can use to say, am I succeeding? The metric you should be using is, am I making money? And if I'm not making money, which is the beautiful thing about the business model canvas, I go back here and I start interrogating, hey, my key partners, are they still giving me good prices? Now that I'm doing 200 magwinya, it means maybe I use 250 kg bags of flour. Surely I should get a discount for that, right? My key activities, hey, am I still using a manual mixer to try and make a batch of 2,000 magwinya using a wooden spoon? Do I need to change my key resources? In other words, hey, I need an industrial mixer to reduce my costs, right? This side you'll probably find is still fine, but when you scale up, your backstage now becomes the engine room of your business. Everything that happens in the background now determines whether you make money up front. So those are some of the things. Can my supply chain partners support my growth? Right? Have I taken all costs into account? Because remember, when we were doing our minimum viable product, right, there was no marketing involved. No huge marketing involved, no huge sales involved. Maybe we were not even distributing, or when we were distributing, I was putting it in the back of my 1 series and just doing the rounds. But now it's 2,000, I need a bakkie. Or if I'm not using a bakkie, maybe I need to hire a delivery truck to be able to do all of this stuff. Oh, now I need an accountant to do the invoicing. So you've got to then look at all your key resources and make sure that you are still being able to operate at scale. So scaling up successfully, how does that happen, right? It depends again on the founder. And remember, the first thing we talked about, vision, right? An entrepreneur has the propensity to scale if their vision is to get their product into as many customers' hands as possible, right? And they must have the curiosity to see the customer use the product. Have you guys ever noticed how in a lot of owner-managed businesses, particularly in the hospitality industry, right, the owner is constantly moving around. Ma'am, are you okay? Is everything fine? Is there anything we can improve? Etc., etc. That whole process is a process of learning. You are tapping into your customers to figure out how are they using the product? How are they experiencing it? How can you make it better? And that's when you obtain feedback and improve. And if you do that, that means in your mind, you are constantly looking for additional problems. Because problems will arise. Customer needs change over time. Right? So for example, if you've got a product that potentially you could supply to your customer from the time they start working until the time they retire, you've got to follow that customer and see how their lifestyle and everything is changing so that you can change your product accordingly. Otherwise, they switch to a competitor. So if you are not constantly, I call it, using medical terms, I call it putting a stethoscope. You know that thing that the doctor uses to listen to your heartbeat? That thing must be always on the market. The minute you lose touch with your customer, and I'm sure Pastor Dube will concur, the minute you lose touch with your congregants, you have no church. The minute your message becomes irrelevant, there's nothing left. They move on. And unfortunately, most of them don't give you notice when they move. You just see empty chairs, and by then it's too late. That's what happened to Kodak. That's what happened to Blockbuster. That's what happened to Nokia. That's what happened to BlackBerry. That's what happened to Dion Wired. The failure to respect and to listen to your customer, because ultimately that's your paymaster. So if whatever you are doing, if you are not customer centric and customer focused, don't go into entrepreneurship. If you cannot engage with the person who gives you money to understand what they want, don't do it. The other one, do you have the right team? People are actually your most important asset. Although most people pay lip service to it. But it's people who get the job done. So it's not about filling offices with warm bodies. You need the right team. And normally as a startup, right, you need a team of people as you start up, right, who are in sync with your vision. They may not be technically as competent as your business will require in 5 years' time. You need jacks of all trades. You need people who can hustle. You need people who can multitask, right? You need people with some of the skills as an entrepreneur that you don't have. So for example, if I'm an introvert and I've started this daycare center, I might need to get in somebody who can go into the community and talk to people. To say, listen, there's this daycare center, etc., 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 right? You need somebody who can help you with your books. At startup stage, you don't need a chartered accountant. Bookkeeper will do. Yeah? But you need people who are good at following through and getting things done. People who focus not on perfection, but on speed and getting things done accurately. Right? And what makes for a successful venture is actually having the right people at each critical stage of the growth of the business. If you guys have ever seen when a rocket takes off, right? When a rocket takes off, it's this one long piece of equipment, and then it takes off, poof, and it flies into the atmosphere. Then at some point in time, there's a piece of it that detaches and falls back down to earth. And then it boosts again. And then there's a second part that falls off, right? By the time this thing reaches the moon, it's a third of the size that it was when it took off. Similarly, at each stage of your business, you need different people to start coming in to your business. More professional skills and all of those things. But one of the things that I've learned, and if any of you ever grow your businesses to a large size, is that try and keep as much of your original core team in your business as you can. Because they understand your vision, they understand your DNA. Most of the people who start coming in as the rocket flies come there for a job. The people you normally start with actually don't work for you for a job. They believe in you as the entrepreneur. And I've seen so many people make those mistakes where they're like, my business is grown. You know, my original management team, they're not educated. So I'm firing them all. And I'm hiring CAs and marketing gurus and stuff like that. But those guys are actually not in it for the long haul. They're there for a job. So your founding team is critical. Look at the most successful businesses. Look at Facebook. Look at Google. The original people that started that business are still there. They've gone and hired much cleverer developers and software engineers, but the original guys are still there. Why? Because they have the same vision. So that for me would be a word of advice to you. And again, the lone entrepreneur will start small, stay small, die small. Right? There are a lot of, I like Apple. As you can see, I always use them as an example. Steve Jobs was the face of Apple. But what a lot of people don't know, that there was a guy whose name was Steve Wozniak, who was the actual brains, technical brains behind Apple. Right? Econet Wireless, Strive Masiwa, he is a billionaire in US dollars, having started this humble business, telecoms business from Zimbabwe. Hardly anybody speaks about these guys. Zeko Azara, Elvis Gwanzura, Douglas Mboweni. They started the business with him, and they are still within Econet today. Right? Facebook. None of these names, everybody knows Zuckerberg. These guys are still there. So, you can't do it alone. You will never be the fountain of all knowledge. I would be very disturbed coming into this church if I didn't see a junior pastor here and there. Because then what we are saying is, hey, Mfundis Dube knows everything. And then where's the sustainability? should he become incapacitated, i-COVID ngamshaya umfundisi and is out of commission for 3 weeks, what do we do as his flock? Right? So a lone entrepreneur will never be able to cut it. Even our Lord Jesus Christ had 12 disciples to help him carry out his work. So do you have resources? Make up your mind what you must own and control, right? Make sure that these resources are flexible and scalable, and cash flow becomes very important. In my personal experience, I've had a business that almost flopped because it was a victim of its own success. Can you imagine that? This business was doing so well, it nearly went broke. Why? I didn't manage my cash flow properly. So picture this. I used to bring in a product out of Zimbabwe. I don't know if you guys have ever come across this product called Mazoe. It's a cordial drink which you dilute with water like Oros. I started bringing this product from Zim. Initially started supplying a couple of spas and independent retailers. And then through my ability to market, I got a listing in ShopRite and Pick n Pay. Right? And they started ordering this product by the truckload. But you must remember that I must pay my supplier in Zim cash, in US dollars. Then the product comes in. Then I supply it to ShopRite DC and to Pick n Pay DC, and I give them two trucks. But then I forget that these guys are only going to pay me in 90 days. But they want stock. My supplier is saying, hey, bring the money, I'll give you stock. But I have no money. I must pay salaries. I must pay drivers. I must pay transport. I must pay rent. I must pay myself. And now I have no money. But the business is there. And what am I doing? I'm frustrating my consumers because my consumers are going into Pick n Pay and saying, where's the product? And Pick n Pay is saying, these black people, you see, you give them an opportunity, they can't fulfill it. So always look at cash flow. Cash flow is very important. Fortunately, I was then able to attract partners into my business to actually put money into the business, and I gave them some shareholding. But imagine if I had not even sold a single case and I said to them, guys, I think this Mazoe thing can be very successful. They all looked at me and said, but I went to them and I said, guys, listen, ShopRite owe me 500,000, Pick n Pay owe me $1 million, Spa owe me this much, but I don't have stock. Then they see it as a different problem now. To say the only problem with this business is it needs cash. And that's why I say your business will never ever start off with needing cash. Solve the problem, qala. Everything else will follow. We talked about systems and processes, so I'm not going to go too much into detail. Value chain support. We talked about suppliers. Can they supply me? Right? Can they support me? And then the other thing is also understanding the balance of power between you and your suppliers. Do they need you more than you need them, or is it the other way around? Because if it's the other way around, you need to be very careful, because they can literally end up running your business for you. And if that is the case, then always make sure that you've got number 2, number 3 additional suppliers in case this one starts to try and squeeze you. Do any of my competitors use some of my key partners? I'll give you a live example. When I was back in Zimbabwe and I was working for Coca-Cola, back in those days, Coca-Cola in Zimbabwe was only found in 300 ml returnable glass bottle and 1 liter. There were no cans, there was no PET and all of those things. Then along came a small company that decided to also do soft drinks. And they decided that they were going to play in exactly the same space as us, glass bottle, 300 ml and 1 liter. Do you know what Coca-Cola did? They went to the glass supplier. They placed an order for 3 years worth of glass. And that was the end of the competitor. Where were they going to buy bottles from? So, so always look at which of my competitors is using the same supplier, and is there a possibility that that competitor can cut off my supply line? And if there is that possibility, look at alternatives. Because if your business is succeeding, believe me, somebody is watching you. And somebody either wants to take your business or kill it. So don't be naive to the fact that, I'm making money and everything is good. The more and more successful you become, the more and more people have got an eye on what you're doing. Then, basics of business model innovation. Does your revenue exceed your expenditure? We discussed that. Does the front stage generate more than the backstage eats up in terms of expenses? And still, it's not over. It's just starting. Right? As an entrepreneur, and this is my last slide, right? Your tenacity, your resilience, your ability to work under pressure will be tested to the limit. That's a certainty. Somebody will try to steal your lunch. In other words, competition is inevitable if you're doing something good. Look at Uber. Uber came in, disrupted the taxi industry. Before we knew it, what happened? Taxify. There's another one called, what is it? Boost? What's it? Bolt. Yeah? Bolt, yeah. Within no time, people start saying, this thing is successful, we also want to do it. Right? Your team will change as you grow. We discussed that. Your growth will also be determined by the problem that you are trying to solve. We discussed that. This is just a recap. Your business model and your customer needs will change over time. Remember, we gave that example to say, if you are providing your customer with a product that you think they will use throughout their entire life, follow them with each stage that they are growing so that you remain relevant. It won't be easy. So let's not lie to ourselves. Entrepreneurship is not easy, right? But it can be very rewarding and you will learn a lot. So, never, ever, ever stop looking for problems. And remember, start small, but dream big. And I wish you all the best of luck. That's me. We have a little bit of time to do a bit of Q&A. I know I've really stretched your guys' minds. I'm sure most of you need some grandfather from all the stuff that I've downloaded on you. But I think from my side, it's just to say I really appreciate your attention. I hope in some shape or form that this has been a value-adding experience to you, and that there's some lessons that you can take forward. Like I said, I will share most of the material with Pastor Dube. But yeah, I think we can take about 5 minutes if guys have questions. Not just to do with the training. If you want to know anything from my experience, from my background, I'm quite open to that. I don't know if we've got a mic to pass around if anybody has any questions. Okay, let's go for it.
Shalom. I don't have a question per se, but it's what you've mentioned that you also fund businesses in the start of cost. So I was asking if you have maybe their website, contact details, so we can actually find
So I'll make my details available to Pastor Dube, and normally what I'll do is also share with him the template that I use to assess businesses. So in some cases, what I do is I'll analyze a business. If it's not specifically something that I'm interested in, I have a network of people that I actually sell businesses to say, listen guys, there's a startup that's trying to do A, B, C, D. Is anybody interested? And I match people together. So I'll share my details. Anyone else? I think people are tired, eh? Or you are overwhelmed. No, that's fine. Let me not keep you guys any longer, but just to say thank you for your attention. I must say I didn't see anybody starting to fall asleep, so I'm thankful for that. I've had situations where even people sitting in the front were snoring and I was busy trying to teach. So thank you for that. Thank you, Pastor Dube. And oh yes, question.
Hi everyone. I wanted to find out something about running a consultancy, because I do that also, and it's mostly on product development. So when somebody would approach you and say they'd like to use your services, consultation services on helping with a product, like a food product, and maybe they're facing some challenges with the product. I'll give an example of one that I've dealt with, which was a sauce, and it was separating, the oil was settling at the top, and I came in and helped them. How do you go about that? Because most people will be like, they'll pay you once the product is okay, or it's on par with what they want it to look like, and maybe now you have a problem with them coming through with the payment. Like how do you handle that as a business that's starting up?
Okay, so consultants is a very difficult field. I do that as well, where sometimes it's almost difficult for you to show the client what the end result will be, but at the same time it's going to cost you time and effort to get that client to where they need to get to. I put a lot of faith in my own abilities, to the point where I will say to a client, this is the outcome that you will get, and if you do not believe I'm the right person to give you that outcome, please go and find someone else to do it for you, because I'm not going to invest my time and effort at no risk, provide you with a solution for which you then delay paying me. So most of the time I will request a minimum of a 30% deposit for me to deliver, and when I deliver I then expect the balance. But at the same time, that's where a lot of young up and coming consultants don't get their things right. Consult a lawyer for terms and conditions, because remember, a consulting agreement is a contract. I, consultant X, am saying that I'm going to provide you with this service over this period of time, and this will be the outcome, right? Should that not be the outcome, there must be a clause that discusses that and how you rectify it. Should you get the outcome, if we agree that you pay me 30 days after I deliver, you must pay me, and it must be signed. The fact that probably you don't have something airtight, then people take advantage of that fact. But right up front, if you have your legal stuff in order, particularly in the consulting space, then you'll be okay. Because at the end of the day, they came to you, they had a problem, and they came to you, and you have the capability of solving that problem. Surely they should share that risk with you by at least paying you a deposit. So stick to your guns, but just make sure You know, a lot of people think lawyers are expensive. You know, a consultation with a lawyer can cost you as little as 1,500 rand. But that 1,500 rand is a huge investment, in the sense that once you've got the contract, you use it for the next 5,000 clients. So if you take that 1,500 and you divide it by 500 clients, it's nothing, but you're protected. So that's what I would advise you.
Hi everyone. Hello everyone. Hi everyone. I just want to say thank you. I really enjoyed the first topic is the one that I enjoyed the most, and I'm sure that I have a business idea, and I'm sure that I'm going to, like, I feel like this session has sort of opened my eyes to what I should be doing, what I'm supposed to do, and hopefully I'll do that, and one day maybe I'll tell you.
We're looking for testimonies. That's exactly what we want. That's exactly what we want. And the way I teach and the way I train, there's nothing that you can ever ask me if I have said that I know it and I've told it to you, where I cannot give you a practical example of it happening. Because it's one thing for us to theorize, but it's very easy when we put it there in black and white to say, so and so did this way, and that was the outcome. So it's outcomes based. So all the principles that you've gone through today are implementable. It's really up to you to do it or not to do it. So I wish you luck. All right. So I think all that's left for me is to say thank you, guys. I really, really hope that today added value to you. Whether you are a startup entrepreneur, corporate entrepreneur, or social entrepreneur, I just hope the mindset has just clicked to a slightly different level for us to just think entrepreneurially in everything we do in our lives. Pastor Dube, thank you for having me. Unfortunately, Mama is not here for me to express my thanks, but I think you will pass on my thanks, and we shall be in touch. Thank you.